Hey, how are y'all doing today? My name is Daniel Dykes, and this video is for the education program of the church, taught by Dr. Martin Jameson. And I'm glad to be with you today. Man, I've made a lot of videos since COVID started, but I have been on staff here at Woodland Heights Baptist Church in West Conway at the corner of Prince and Hogan since August of 1999. Which is before some of you can remember, and maybe before some of you were even born. All that means is that I'm old. I've been married for 42 years to my wife, Lana, and we have 2 children. John is our older one. He's 34. And then I have a daughter, Beth, and Beth is 28. Beth is married to Patrick Edwards, and they are the parents of my 2 granddaughters, Mia and Abby. You know, I've been in education ministry for 43 years, which is an awful long time. And I've seen a lot of changes over that time. And I don't have time to share with you all of those changes. But one of the first things I want to share with you is, just kind of the names of things have changed in these years. When I first started, everybody called the Sunday morning Bible study time Sunday school. Now, there are a lot of different names for it. Sunday morning Bible study, small groups, life groups, connect groups. You know, that's just naming a few of those. But right now, our church has moved back from calling them Bible study groups to Sunday school. Because, see, here in the South, especially in Arkansas, people know what Sunday school is. You know, if you're serving up north or in some other parts of the country, they've never heard of Sunday school. They might just think it's classes for children. But we know that all ages can take part in Sunday school. Basically, what these groups are, whatever they're called, are they're groups that meet together and they attempt to meet the needs of each other. And the people in these groups are usually the ones that you're closest to in your church. Now, I'm going to share some with you initially about some of the nuts and bolts that are involved in having a successful Sunday school or small group or whatever you call it. And the first thing that I want to talk about is my personal top touches. In order to reach people and bring them into your Sunday school group, and I'll just call it that from now on. You can substitute in your mind whatever you want it to be. But basically, it all starts on Sunday morning. You know, you want to provide for a positive first touch for every member and guest every Sunday. You don't want to have a bad day because that may be the only time that person gives you a chance. So one of the things you want to do is make sure you have someone in the class assigned as a greeter. Second, you want to encourage your class members to escort these guests to worship. Now, if you have worship before you have your Sunday school time, you'd have to, there's really no way around that. But if you do have worship after, you might want to find someone that can take them to worship, because you want to make sure that they get the most out of it by having somebody sitting with them that they're familiar with. And also, if your worship time ends near lunch, invite them to lunch. Great way to get to know people is invite them out to lunch. And of course, everybody loves to get a free lunch. Okay, the next thing is you want to get information, email addresses, cell phone number, anything you can of that person. Now, however you do it, if there's a registration card, if you have a way to do it online, make sure you get registration, because as I said before, this may be the only time that you have contact with that person. And once you get that information, you want to contact them during the week, thank them for coming, and invite them to anything else that you may have going on. If you have Wednesday night activities and they have kids or whatever, you may want to invite them, or if you have an upcoming social event. We don't have a whole lot of those right now with COVID, but if you do, you may want to invite them to that. Okay, another thing is make sure you use social networking. If you've got a Facebook page for your class, you can get them involved with that. If you have a church Facebook page, you may want to send them there so they can get more information about what's going on. If you have a website, make sure they're aware of that. And, some of you may do Instagram or other things. Just make sure they know that you have a presence there, and your class really needs to have a presence so they're able to connect with each other. And, you want to invite them to be part of your group as soon as possible. And this is a good way of touching and making sure they can connect with you. All right. Another thing that you want to do is have some type of prayer chain already established and let them know they can be part of that. You know, one of the most important things we can do for people we just meet is find out if they have any prayer needs. Because sometimes if they haven't been in church for a while, the reason they're at church is because something's happened that's brought them back to church and they have some kind of prayer need. So you may want to check with that and let them know that you're willing to get involved in their lives and pray for their needs. Okay, you know, if they can't go eat with you on Sunday, the last thing I'm going to mention is have someone in the class invite them out during the week. Make some way of contacting with them. You know, when I was young, we used to go visit with people in their homes. We don't do that so much anymore. Sometimes they'll let you come into their home, but a lot of times they won't. It's easier to meet them somewhere for a meal or some other type of activity. Okay, now, one of the keys to having a successful small group Sunday school, whatever you call it, is to have open enrollment. Now, I'm not sure if you know what that is. Basically, it means you enroll somebody in your group anytime. The way that you have to kind of sometimes have an attitude change in order to do that. Because, you know, a lot of people think that we only enroll somebody when they've kind of shown an interest in us. We need to realize that, you know, we're concerned about them. And anytime we have an opportunity to get them to be part of our group, we want to sign them up, get their information so we can make sure that they're able to be part of our group. Now, by them signing up to be part of our group, that puts no responsibility on them. All the responsibility is on us to contact them and let them know how much we care about them. Okay, another attitude change that we need to make is realize that, you know, you can't just enroll somebody on Sunday morning. You can do it anytime. You know, if you've just met them and they have a need, say, oh, would you like to be part of my group? You can do it anytime. There's no set rules about when somebody can enroll in your group. You know, when I was younger, somebody used to say that once somebody came 3 times in a row, you could enroll them in Sunday school. And most of our members don't come 3 times in a row, so it'd be hard to enroll anybody. But we want to make sure that we know that whenever they're there or whenever they're not there and we contact them, they can become part of our group. Okay, another attitude change would be, you know, make sure that everybody in the class knows that they can enroll people in Sunday school. Because if it's just the teacher that's doing that, then that's, you know, one fewer thing that can happen that can take care of it. All right, now, the next attitude change is in order for most people to be enrolled, they have to show a level of commitment to Sunday school class. No, that's not true. You know, you want to enroll people who have no interest if they're able to be enrolled, especially if they're not a Christian. You know, one of the best ways to reach people for Christ is to enroll them in a Sunday school class. You know, the Bible, the Great Commission tells us to go ye therefore and reach all nations. And so we want to work to do that. All right. Now, what we have to do next is we have to move from this attitude change to action. The first action that you need to do is come up with a list of people you know who are not enrolled in your Sunday school, and, you know, make sure you have opportunities to enroll them. Second is you assign these people to a class that would be appropriate, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, so they can get enrolled. The third thing is, you know, have the assigned class contact them and invite them to be part of the class so that maybe they can come and be part of your group. And then the fourth one, when they agree to enroll, you know, you make sure you pray for them and let them know you care about them and get them whatever material you're studying so they can be ready to be part of the group. Okay, now another thing that we do, and you know, that some people aren't as sensitive to as maybe I might be, is age grading in Sunday school. You know, I'm a minister of education, so I think that we should do that. And the reason we do that is so we know where to assign these prospects. You know, if we don't have ages assigned to each class, then when somebody that's 25 comes in, we don't know exactly where to send them to. Now, you know, another thing that we do in assigning them, especially with younger adults, is we go by their children's age as well, because a lot of times adults will have more in common with people who have children about the same age as they do, more so than just people that are have the same age as they do. And here's what you do if people complain about age grading. They say they don't want to give you their age. Here's what you can do at this point. You tell them, well, hey, why don't we do this? We'll group people according to weight. Usually they stop complaining when you do that. Okay, and I've also learned through the years that adults are not going to promote. Once they get in a class, they're going to stay in that class. And so here's the thing that you can do to kind of keep up with them. Instead of assigning necessarily an age range to the class, now you'll put that publicly on the signs, but keep up with birth years. Because, people's age changes every year. Some ladies think theirs don't, but they do. Their birth year never changes. So if that class has a series of birth years assigned to them, you always know where to put people. Okay, so, and when you're going to have major growth in your Sunday school, it's not going to happen necessarily in these established classes, though they can grow. It happens through starting new units. And the way that we do this, of course, is if we have age grading and we know where to assign them, then we get new people set up to be in that new class, and we want to make sure that they're doing that. In fact, we have not been doing Sunday school for a while, and I'll tell you more about that later on. But when we begin Sunday school again, we've got two new units that are going to be started because we've had a lot of people join during this time that we've not been having a Sunday morning Bible study or Sunday school time. Okay, I want to share with you now just some things that an adult teacher should do. Whether you're a teacher or you're in charge of getting teachers, they need to have a job description. The teacher is responsible for leading people toward faith in Christ and guiding them to serve Him through evangelism, discipleship, fellowship, ministry, and worship. In pursuing the mission, a teacher must understand that teaching moves beyond the Bible study lesson and into the daily living of the participants. A teacher must look for opportunities to mentor participants before and after Bible study sessions. Ensure that a positive ministry environment is provided during the session that facilitates the work of the Holy Spirit, and they need to invest himself or herself in building positive relationships with participants and involve learners in meaningful Bible study. Now, here's what their major responsibilities are. These may be a little too small for you to read, but I'll share them with you. First is to lead a small group of adults in meaningful Bible study. Second is to build positive relationships with participants and prospects and ensure that they are contacted regularly in order to meet their needs. Then you need to maintain attendance records and other participant information that strengthens the group's pursuit of the overall purpose and mission of Sunday school. Fourth, you need to lead participants toward faith in the Lord Jesus Christ and guide them to serve Him through evangelism, discipleship, fellowship, ministry, and worship. Organize a class to support that work effectively. And fifth, you want to enlist an apprentice from the group for the purpose of teaching a new adult class or working in another age group as a teacher within 2 years. This is how we start those new units. We constantly have to be coming up with new teachers, and if you have an apprentice in your class, then they can do that. Okay, and then number 6, set a positive example for others by living as an authentic witness of Christ and being fully involved in the life and ministry of the church. Okay, and next I want us to look at basically what you need to know as a teacher of adults. Of course, I'm a minister of education, and I work primarily with adults. I know that there are other people that are sharing with you that are going to be talking about students and children, so I'm mainly talking about adults. Basically, if you have been enlisted to teach adults, you have one of the most remarkable assignments in the kingdom. There are 3 simple things to remember about your extremely important appointment. First, a good teacher knows what you are assigned to teach. You're a student of God's Word. In reality, the Holy Spirit is the one who is best capable to teach. He allows you to join as He convinces and convicts you to become the most enthusiastic student in your class. Your job is to investigate the Bible passage, study the commentary, and be familiar with ways to put the truth into life. You will learn facts, illustrations, questions, and answers. You will have a growing understanding of what God says through the information you're teaching. All right, the next thing is a growing teacher knows who you are teaching. There are a lot of times I will fill in a class, and I don't know all the people in the class as well as the normal teacher does. And I tell the teacher, when I fill in, I said, I'm not going to be able to teach the class. I'm going to have to teach the lesson. And I encourage them when they're teaching that they need to be teaching the class, which means they know the needs of the individuals. So if you know who you're teaching, you're going to be teaching people who are experiencing remarkable life transitions and stories. And if you keep up with them, you'll know about those. You teach adults who God has influenced to intersect their life with your class. It's interesting how many people remember the most influential teacher in their life. You probably do as well. These teachers showed care, concern, and personal attention to the needs of the student. Your job is to teach people. Although you're never able to fully know each person in your class, each person will feel more part of the group and open to learning opportunities if they know that they can trust you. God has placed people in your group that He's called you to love, and He's called you to gain their trust and to teach them to obey God. You can involve other persons to invite their friends, relatives, and associates, neighbors, and prospects to the group. Okay, the next thing that a gifted teacher knows how to teach. And I think it's very important that teachers know how to teach. And some of the stuff I'm sharing with you today, we'll be talking a little bit more about that. Teachable moments take place during the class session as well as throughout the week. The teacher prayerfully starts each class session by creating interest in the reason for engaging the topic. They should spend at least 75% of the class time to provide opportunities for participants to read, ask, and answer questions, listen, discuss, think, and write as they investigate God's Word. My preferred method of teaching is not lecturing you like I'm doing now, but because of COVID, I'm not there with you. I'm having to do a video and share with you. Okay, you need to help members consider and make decisions about applying God's Word. Also bring each session to a meaningful closure. Provide opportunities for participants to continue learning throughout the week about the issues surfaced during the sessions. It's so important that they know how to apply the lesson to their life when they leave. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about learning styles. I don't know if you're aware of what your learning style is, but while I'm telling you a little bit about that, I want you to prepare to take a little test. If you have a piece of paper, this doesn't require a whole lot of room on the paper, but get a pencil and paper while I'm telling you about these 3 different learning styles. The first style is auditory, and auditory learners really spend a lot of time listening and talking, and sometimes they're easily distracted. They may have a more difficult time with written directions. They like to be read to. They memorize by steps in a sequence. They enjoy music, just a lot of things like that. That's how auditory learners learn. And visual learners learn by seeing things, okay? Sometimes their mind strays because if there's nothing visual there, they're going to find something visual somewhere else. That's why I have my screen here, so there's something visual for you to look at and something auditory as I'm speaking. I'm covering 2 of those, and we'll talk about kinesthetic in a minute. So basically, a visual learner observes rather than talks or acts. They're organized in approach of task. They like to read. They're usually a good speller. Okay, and then the last one, kinesthetic. They like to get involved. They like physical rewards. They're in motion most of the time. They like to touch people when talking to them, which we can't do right now. They tap pencil or foot while studying. So these are some of the things that we know about that. Okay, now I hope that you have your paper and pencil ready. I'm going to ask you a series of 9 questions, and your response to the question is going to be A, B, or C, okay? And then you'll keep up with how many of each of those you get. All right, the first one of those is you usually remember more from a class when A, you do not take notes but listen very closely. B, you sit near the front of the room and watch the speaker. Or C, you take notes, whether or not you look at them again. All right, second question. You usually solve problems by A, talking to yourself or a friend. B, using an organized, systematic approach with lists, schedules, etc. Or C, walking, pacing, or some other physical activity. Okay, the third one, you remember phone numbers when you cannot write them down by A, repeating the numbers orally, B, seeing or visualizing the numbers in your mind, or C, writing the numbers with your finger on a table or wall. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Number 4, you find it easiest to learn something new by A, listening to someone else explain how to do it, B, watching a demonstration of how to do it, or C, trying it yourself. Okay, question number 5, and there are only 9 questions, so stay with me. Number 5, you remember most clearly from a movie, A, what the characters said, background music and noises, B, the scenery, the setting and costumes, or C, the feelings you experience during the movie. Okay, number 6, when you go to a grocery store, you A, silently or orally repeat the list, B, walk up and down the aisles to see what you need, or C, usually remember what you need from the list you left at home. Okay, number 7, you are trying to remember something, so you A, try to see it happen in your mind, B, hear in your mind what was said or the noises that occurred, or C, feel the way it reacted with your emotions. Okay, just a couple more. Number 8, you learn a foreign language best by A, listening to tapes or records. You tell this is kind of dated. B, writing and using workbooks, or C, attending a class in which you read and write. Okay, and one more, the final one. You are confused about the correct spelling of a word, so you A, sound it out, B, try to see the word in your mind, or C, write the word several different ways. Choose one that looks right. Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to add up your number of A's, how many of them that you answered A to, add up how many ever you answered B to, and how many you answered C to. And whichever one is the highest score is what your main area of learning is, okay? Now, some of you may be kind of even because you're kind of across the board. The reason I wanted to share this with you is because I learned this after I was done with my schooling, and I realized that I was a kinesthetic learner because I was all the way in seminary before I realized that the way I studied best was to recopy my notes. First of all, when I wrote them in class, I had to write so quickly they were hard to read. And second, by reading them again and writing them down, I discovered by the time I had done that, I was ready for the test almost. So I learned to be a kinesthetic learner. You find out the best way you learn, and you can use that to help you as long as you're learning. And since you're in college, that may be kind of helpful for you. Okay, and now one of the things that you do is when you're teaching, you want to use a variety of teaching methods, okay? And these also speak to your learning style. So what winds up happening is people will tend to teach the way they learn, but you don't need to fall in that trap. You need to use all these different techniques because the learners, even though you may be an auditory learner, they may be visual or kinesthetic, if you understand. So you have to find ways that you can reach all of them, okay? Some of the verbal techniques are case study, circular response, debate, discussion, things like that. You have pencil and paper techniques. These are for kinesthetic learners. A written dialogue or monologue, maybe writing letters, using articles, or paraphrasing things, or maybe doing a puzzle, something like that. There are some drama techniques, once again, a very kinesthetic learning style, choral speaking, doing a skit, monologue, dialogue, things like that. And then art and music techniques, cartoons, montage, posters, things like that can help learn. And technology, using the new things. I have learned over the years that probably the best way to help someone learn is to involve more than one sense at a time, which is what I'm trying to do by having visuals and talking at the same time. And hopefully that's helping you learn. Okay, we're going to move on to ministry because ministry is a very important part of our education. Ministry, we call it. I think your class is called the education program, but we try to involve ministry in that. And I mentioned earlier, a lot of times we don't get to visit with people as much as we used to, but there still is a place for ministry visits. One of the things that it does is it really extends the ministry of the teacher and the class. And a ministry visit is really an opportunity to meet the needs of a class member in a crisis. You know, a lot of times something has happened and you have to go visit. I find that a lot of times when I go visit someone, it's when a crisis has happened. And some of those might be birth of a child, death of a family member, loss of a job, illness, separation or divorce, other family issues, spiritual crisis, other things like that. And here's some things how maybe you can prepare for a ministry visit. First of all, you know the reason you're going before you go. Second, you pray before you go. Then you assemble your resources that you need, whatever information you need, any physical resources, and if you want to take another volunteer with you. And you want to arrange that visit time because you don't want to waste time going to see someone and not being able to get into their home. Okay, and the next step is, what do I do during the visit? Once again, you want to pray again. And if you've got somebody there with you, you want them to pray the whole time you're making the visit. And while you're there, you want to listen. You want to hear what they're saying, and you want to hear what they're not saying. You know, sometimes that's all they want. They just want to talk and have someone listen. And then you want to give encouragement, give any resources you might have. And if you have any instructions you share with them, you can do that after you've heard what they're trying to tell you. And finally, just assure them that God is there in this time of crisis. Okay, now let's move on to kind of the last area that I think is important. A couple of things. First of all, some ideas for making contacts. You know, I think it's important that we constantly make contacts and coming up with unique ways to do that, whether it's by texting or by sending a group email, things like that, ways that you can get in touch with them and let them know you care about them and not contacting them the same way all the time. You know, used to we would send out snail mail, and that is still a good thing to do sometimes. You know, my granddaughters love to get things in the mail. That's not saying adults do, because most of the stuff we get is bills, but when you get an envelope in the mail and something is handwritten on the front, that gets your attention, and it may get you to read it. And it's the same way with personalized emails or texts or things like that. So let me remind you about that, okay? And then the next thing, here's some fellowship ideas that you could do during COVID-19, okay? First, maybe have a virtual meal. You know, if I'm not saying Zoom the meal, but you could do that and just let the other people know what you're eating and have some fellowship virtually while you're eating separately. Okay, here's a second one. We're calling that 6 seaters. Instead of having the whole group, just have 6 people that can wear a mask and spread out and spend some time together. You're not necessarily eating if you're wearing the mask, but it's a good time to do that. A third thing would be maybe a bonfire. Right now it's still a little cool, and you can maybe have a bonfire, grill some hot dogs. And when you're outside, everybody feels a little safer outside. You can maybe take your mask off when you're separated and have a good time visiting together that way. And, you know, maybe take a hike. This would be a way to get separated. As it gets a little bit warmer, your group could get together, go on a hike, and as long as you don't get too far apart, you can still communicate with one another. So, you know, it's just one of those things that over time we realize that we've had fellowships for years, but once COVID-19 got here, all of that changed. And, you know, I talked a long time before I first mentioned COVID, but we're going to probably talk about it the rest of our time together. Now, I'm not going to go on forever and ever talking, but I do want to share some things, the ways that COVID-19 has affected me personally and has affected our church. And so I'm just going to talk about navigating during COVID-19 at my church, Woodland Heights Baptist Church. Very unusual thing happened. I was on a mission trip to Honduras, out in a remote village. And we left on Sunday, I guess March 9th. And we were in the village March 9th. No, maybe March 8th, excuse me. And we were there the 9th, 10th, and 11th. And we came back on the 12th. And if you remember, that was the time COVID was really making changes. People were things were closing. Sporting events were getting canceled. All that was happening. And I was in a remote village. You see here, I'm sitting next to a nurse. I was on a mission group where we did mission work as well as medical, dental, and things like that. I was sharing the gospel. But we were in such a remote area that we had no cell phone coverage, absolutely none. So we had no idea what was going on until we headed back on that Thursday. And of course, by that time, things had gotten crazy. And we were back at our mission home. And I'm telling everybody, I said, listen, we don't need to wait till Saturday to go back. We need to go back Friday. And they said, oh, no, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. Well, I'm not sure if you remember, but on that Saturday when we all came back, you see this picture. This is in the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. There were only 9 hubs that everybody returning to the United States from foreign countries came through. And we were in one of those. So here I am. I took this picture. I'm in a line with thousands of people all returning from foreign countries. It's kind of scary. You know, people would ask me for months after COVID when I felt the most vulnerable. Well, this was it right here. Because, I mean, I'm completely surrounded by strangers because I got a little ahead of some of the folks in my group. And it was kind of scary. And if you look at this picture, I'm probably 20 minutes into a 2.5-hour wait. We left this building that we're in now, went out and wrapped completely around a part of the airport and came back in to this building and got in the line that the people are in behind the rail there to the other side. So it was pretty scary. And I know everybody was scared, but it was a crazy time for us. We missed our flight. And in fact, I actually got to the gate in time to catch the flight. And I told them, I said, listen, if you don't know what's going on, immigration is crazy. Nobody else in my group is here. Can you please hold the flight? And they said, no, we can't do that. I said, why not? They said, because we're required to close the doors 10 minutes before takeoff. I said, well, you've got at least 30 people that are supposed to be on the flight that aren't here. Well, they took off without us getting there. And they, you know, some of our group spent the night in the airport. I had done that previously. So some of us were able to get on a flight to Fort Smith instead of to Little Rock. And we had the bus come pick us up there. And I got back home about 2 in the morning, but I was glad to be back. It was really kind of an unusual time. And of course, then we got back, and for the last couple of days, I know the churches were trying to decide if they were going to have worship on that March the 15th, that Sunday. And as it turned out, we did not have church that day. I think I went to church that day, and some of the people showed up because they did not know that we'd canceled services. There were maybe 20 or 30 people there. But from March 15th to May 10th, we had online worship only. Now, our church was already doing our worship service online. We already had a presence with cameras, and so it wasn't new for us. The thing that was new was doing it with no one sitting in the congregation. And as you know, that really makes a big difference. I don't know if you've been at church or you've been worshiping at home. For a few weeks during that time, I actually stayed home because I wasn't on the program, and it was thought best for me to do that. And it just isn't the same. You know, when you're at home, even though the service is on TV, you're just not quite as involved as if you're physically there. And I'm telling you, when I'm at church, I'm physically not in the sanctuary usually because I have other responsibilities, but I'm close enough that I can hear everything that's going on. And it's like I'm a part of it. But when I'm totally away, it really made a huge difference. So that's kind of how we started. And we were trying to figure out ways that we could still stay in contact with the people while we were not having in-person worship. And just to look, we didn't have in-person worship through May the 10th, which was Mother's Day. And I don't know if you recall, but a little bit before the May the 10th, Governor Hutchinson came out and said if we followed strict guidelines with masking and social distancing, that we could start meeting as of May 10th. Well, we had on April the 11th, we had a drive-through. I think we did that on Saturday. That was Easter, the day before Easter, and we had a drive-through parade and had a lot of people that drove by, and the staff was in the parking lot, and we got to wave at them and see them, and we were socially distanced, and that was really, really cool. And then we had already planned an event for Mother's Day. We did this on Sunday morning. We let the group drive through our parking lot. Fortunately, we have a very large parking lot where you can wrap around and come back through. And so in doing that, we had a lot of people that came by, and I think we had flowers or something for the mothers that came through. And it was a great time getting to see everybody. And we knew at that time we were going to be having in-person worship on the 17th. Well, now, starting on the 17th, we started at 9 o'clock and 11 o'clock on-site worship and online worship. Before that time, the only times we'd ever had 2 worship services on Sunday morning was during Easter, and we'd only done that a few times. So this was a whole new experience for us. We started that second service, and quite honestly, we'll never go back to not having 2 services, because it's just a simple fact that there are people that can come at 9 o'clock for worship who cannot come at 11 o'clock for worship. So we'll do that. And initially, both of our services were online. So that's what we did beginning May the 17th. All right, moving right along. On September 13th, which was, of course, after school had started back, and it was the Sunday after Labor Day, we moved our first worship time to 8:30, and a second time was still at 11 o'clock. And in between, we had a 9:45 Sunday school. And at that point, we were doing 11 a.m. online worship. Okay, so only one of our online services was broadcast. Of course, it was put on YouTube and on our Facebook page, so you could watch it later on if you missed it when it was originally there. So we started having Sunday school, and we really had good attendance. In fact, better attendance than I thought we would have. So we continued with that for several weeks, and I know if you experienced what we did there in the middle of November, after we'd been going for 2 months, the governor came out and said, listen, we're having way too many cases. We need to stop having these small group meetings. So on the 22nd, which was the Sunday before Thanksgiving, and there was it being Thanksgiving, and large groups of people getting together for Thanksgiving had a big influence on why we went into what we called a winter pause, and we went back to our 9 and 11 a.m. worship. And of course, now we had just moved to the 11 a.m. online worship only. But at this point, I was continuing to come into church, because one of my jobs is to count the attendance, and I was doing that during the time, and I was also making the coffee at this time. So this is what we did, and I want to share with you some of the creative things I think we did during this time. Our minister to children and outreach realized that since school stopped meeting, basically March the 13th, which was Friday the 13th, my wife was a school teacher. She actually was retiring last year, so that was her last day to teach in the classroom, March the 13th. After that, there was no in-house schooling. Everybody was in virtual school at that point. So one of the problems that came up is the kids would depend on the school for their food. And some of them still provided lunches, but we thought one of the things that we could do to help out would be to provide breakfast. So we started doing some breakfast drives at the church. The first one was in March, and the last one was in July, right before school started back in August. And I think we did 8 breakfast drives, but here's what happened. We had 517 boxes of food that were given out. And let me move on to a picture. As you can see, these aren't small boxes of food. These are huge boxes of food that we gave out. They had eggs and bacon and cereal. It was and Pop-Tarts and several other things, that you could have for breakfast. Usually there would be some juice and some milk, just a lot of things that people could use to have breakfast. And so it was really kind of a neat thing. that we were able to do during that time. But what I want to say is the way we found these people is we started going out to areas around our church. There are some mobile home communities near us. And so we went out, and instead of trying to see anybody in person, we were still sensitive to the social distancing and the masking. We would wear our masks, and we put flyers on their doors or in their doors, and they could call a certain number if they wanted to get a box for breakfast. Well, through that time, we gave out so many, we gave out all those boxes. I think if we go back, you'll see it says we gave out 517 boxes, and we fed 2,254 people. Now, some of those people we fed more than once. And the total amount of money that we spent to do all this was $34,639. And basically, all the money that we spent was donated by our folks. And even more money than we spent was used for that. So that was an amazing success. And what we were able to do is by involving them in the breakfast drives, we were able to get their information and be able to contact them, because every time we would have a breakfast drive, we'd let them know, hey, we're doing a breakfast drive again, which is why we had so many repeat customers. Well, when summer came along, we wound up doing VBS in backyards. Normally we have a very large VBS here on site, but we knew we couldn't do that. So we had folks volunteer their yards, front yards or backyards, to host. And I would say we had probably 20 or more of these backyard VBSs. Here's a picture of the one I served in. And this was in a backyard. And at our VBS, we only had maybe 3 children from the neighborhood. Some of our other children were breakfast drive kids whose parents brought them in. And we did have some church kids that were there as well. So it was a great time as we made crafts, we had Bible stories, and we had recreation. If you look at the picture at the bottom with the older man that's standing beside his shed there, he built that from just leftover parts. And if we were having VBS at the church, his name's Johnny. Johnny would have never helped us. But I asked Johnny, I said, Johnny, one of the things that we talk about in VBS this year is building. So if you could just share a little bit about that. And I didn't think he would ever hush. And once he started talking about the building, he didn't want to talk about the building anymore. He wanted to talk about Jesus and tell them that they all needed to accept Jesus as their Savior. So it was a great time, and we were able to reach a lot of people that way. And by inviting all the kids from all the breakfast drives, they went to different places and were able to become part of what we were doing. So that was kind of an amazing thing, and we wound up celebrating there in the church parking lot, inviting everybody, and we had food trucks and everything, and they could come and take part in that. Okay, another thing that we did was on October 3rd, we did a one-day mission trip. Typically, Southern Baptist, which is what I am, we have a one-day mission trip, and all the different churches come from around the state and descend on one association or one county and try to do some work for all of them. But we knew we couldn't do that. So this year, it was called Serve Local. And there is a church in Conway called New Hope Baptist Church. It's on Highway 64 on the road to Valonia, past the Commons Mall. And one of our laymen in our church felt called to ministry and was trained for the ministry. And they called him as pastor, so he's pastor there. And their minister of music came out of our church to go help as well. And we've sent other people over there to New Hope to help. So we did one day serving with them. And here's some pictures of some of the work that we did. The fella kind of in the middle of the picture there, the shorter guy with the hat on, he's the pastor of the church. His name's Roy Jutzy, and he does a wonderful job. And we were helping them fix up the church on the outside and on the inside, and it was a wonderful time, once again, of doing some outreach. And since then, we've had several other folks from our church who have decided to go over there and help. You know, our pastor says every Sunday during the invitation, some of you are going to come here to become part of our church, and others of you are going to come down and tell us that you've been sent out to be part of some other church. and we're willing to let you go either place. We just want you doing what God wants you to do. All right, so let's kind of move on to another thing that we did, and this would be our Great Pumpkin Drive-Through. Typically at Easter and at Halloween are our two biggest outreaches of the year. We missed the Easter one completely because of COVID. We did have the drive-through just to see people. It was interesting. We had some of the people that would normally come to our Easter event get in line and wonder why they weren't getting candy. Now, I believe that towards the end of that, we did have one bag of candy to give per car, but it wasn't nearly the amount of candy that we gave out previously. So this year, when we came to the October 31st, which was actually Halloween this year, it happened on a Saturday night, we were able to have what we call the Great Pumpkin Drive-Through, and we had a huge crowd that came out for that. In fact, I thought it was a little bit too large. It was supposed to be from 4 to 6 p.m., and I think we got done about 7:15, and that was just with people that were in line. There were people that came through that told me they had been in line over an hour, and I just felt sorry for them. But, you know, the people, all they did was drive through, and at the end, they got a bag of candy, and it was a great time, and we had a super opportunity to reach out to some folks that way. And through each of these activities, we have had people who have come to our church and become part of our church because of the outreach events that we've done. Okay, now the exciting thing, and this is what's coming up. Beginning this Sunday, I'm doing this on, this is March the 3rd, we're going to have Sunday school again. It's been since November 22nd, and some of our classes, of course, have been Zooming the whole time. And my wife and I have actually been doing a class. We just record it like I'm recording this video right now. And people will watch that on Sunday. We've been doing that since April 5th, so we're almost a year into doing that, but we'll be able to be in person. And so we're excited. We're trying to get all the rooms set up and ready for that. And so we're going back to our previous schedule of 8:30 worship, 11 o'clock worship, and 9:45 Sunday school. And again, the 11 o'clock will be online. So these are some of the things that we've been doing. You know, the education ministry of the church has changed over time. And it's just one of those things that you kind of have to change with the times, or you're going to kind of, you know, you're kind of going to get left behind. So we've been trying to do the things that we need to do to reach the people where we are. You know, my pastor said something, and it really made an impact on me. We're trying to reach those people that nobody else wants. You know, he's told us, says, when you're reaching the people that nobody wants, then God will send you the people that everybody wants. And we've been experiencing that. We've had a lot of people that have joined our church and become a part of that. And that's the reason we're having to start 2 new classes. We've had some young adults who need to be involved in a singles class, and we're starting that class. And then we've had a lot of couples that have come in, and they've not been in a class because they all came in after we quit meeting. And so instead of trying to get them all into the classes that are existing, we're starting a new class for them. So it's an exciting time, and we're really looking forward to that. You know, just to mention quickly, our discipleship classes typically have been on Wednesday night, but we've been unable to do those in person. There have been some online and some Zoom classes of that, and we'll continue to do that. I've encouraged our people to come by and check out our DVD classes. We have lots of those, and they can take that home with the workbooks and kind of work on their own or work in small groups, because we have to be creative and do things in a different way. We've been having some in-home Bible studies and things like that. And I appreciate the opportunity to share with you. This has been a lot of fun, and I hope that you've enjoyed it as much as I'd enjoyed doing it. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me at danieldykes@conwaycorp.net, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And that's all for me, and we will hopefully see you later on. And I'm just praying for you, those of you that are called to ministry, that in the coming days you will be able to have a fruitful ministry. Some of you are even doing that right now, and I thank you for the service that you have. Okay, bye.